Hello, and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith at nonnatus.org. This is our Our Lady, Our Mother podcast series with myself, Ann DeSantis, and Carlos Solorzano, who is our board member. He is a teacher, he is a musician, an actor, he's a writer. He's done so much. Let's hear your condensed bio, Carlos. That would be great.
My big thing is a theology teacher at South Point Catholic High School. It's my 30th year overall teaching, my 11th year there. And I grew up in the arts, mainly music. Started getting into writing more in my 20s and then started doing film stuff in the last couple of years. Just looking for creative outlets. Just to, live life and also to challenge myself and even my wife is also an artist, a performer, and our kids are involved in the arts, so you still have to model hard work and living to your kids, and so that and they, everyone needs to see that you love what you do, and there's different things that we do. So I just think, we have to remember to live, and if I decide one day, I'm gonna take up gardening. Let's do it. Let's take on a new challenge and see if I can make that work. So,
Yeah, I love that in life that we have options every day about
hmm
what we're interested in and how we live our lives. But the one thing that remains the same as people of faith, people of the Catholic faith, is that we take Our Lady along with us, right? Because it's the name of this
hmm
podcast, Our Lady, Our Mother. We take our faith with us. But there's a whole lot of room for gifts and talents, aren't there? And
hmm
I think you're a perfect example of that, the way that you live your life. Of course, you're the
Thank you.
author of I Am His Mother, which I encourage people to go on Amazon and learn about that great book that Carlos wrote. And that was part of the inspiration for this podcast. And we also did several other series on Our Lady of Mother for the foundation over the years, over the last several years. But we decided to do like a monthly podcast too. There's so much to talk about through the lens of faith, through the lens of Our Lady. And so the topic of this one is going to be when you have a loss of faith, the crisis of loss of faith. And I think, Carlos, and I think you'll agree with me, at some point or another, we've all been there. We've all been in a place where we thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to go to Mass. I don't feel like God loves me anymore. I don't
hmm
have any energy to want to practice my faith. I think even the best of us have had days where we've had been challenged over our lifetime,
hmm
I'm right now I'm really blessed because I'm at a great time in my faith life where I haven't felt that way in quite some time. But there were times in my early life, we'll say maybe when I was in my teens and 20s, where I was challenged, and there were times, unfortunately, hate to admit it, where I did fall away from going to Mass every week and from really practicing my faith the way that I should have. And maybe my faith journey's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But we do want to touch on that topic. We want to touch on that topic for those of you who are listening that you've had a loss of faith. Maybe you're even in another denomination right now, or you've never even been Catholic to begin with, and you're interested in joining the Catholic Church. So, Carlos, I'll hand it over to you. What has your experience been of experiencing loss
Ooh.
of faith, whether it be for you or even for other family members? Please do share.
Yeah, my crisis was in graduate school. I went to a secular school, and I'll never forget being at the Theology of the Body Institute when Christopher West was talking about, you're in a dialogue with the world. And he was extremely adamant about you are dealing with people that are intelligent and they're committed to their ideology. So they know their position well. But in my case, it was one of those things where it really challenged more of my belief in the divine. And I remember it was difficult because, my head was spinning for about a year and a half. And I can regretfully say now that I was teaching theology, and it wasn't like it was totally gone, but there were certainly days where I think I was collecting a paycheck more than really ministering to my students. And I was speaking to a mentor of mine who's, he's retired now, but he's still someone I turn to a lot on things, different things. And he said to me, he goes, "Your biggest problem is you don't focus on the journey. You want answers now. And sometimes you have to realize that you're not ready for it. You haven't found yet what you need. Someone can give this pronounced thing about why God exists or why the Catholic faith is true." He goes, "But where are you right now on this path? And how is that going to help you?" And then recently, I was interesting because I don't even remember who I was listening to, but it was an apologist. And he was saying, well, consider the fact that even believing in God doesn't mean you're not going to have a faith crisis. You might have someone who, they're going through a tough time. And so it's not that you don't believe in God, but you might be mad at God. Like, why is this happening? Or, someone close to you dies. Why did this happen? And I think, because as someone said, even if, you could, God walked into your front door today and revealed who he was to you and you believe it and it's been proven to you, that doesn't mean you're going to accept him. Because again, you may have some baggage, some struggles you have that are really pinning you down. Like with my students, I tell them, I go, don't think for 1 second that I don't struggle too. I don't. And one time, one of them asked me, okay, well, what do you struggle with? I go, well, there's certainly um, some of the Beatitudes, some of the, teachings. I always look at Matthew chapter 5 through 7. I'm like, there are some very difficult teachings. And aside from that, sometimes this is why I try to avoid the news is, you look at the world and it's kind of like I sit there and I'm like, look, I'm not God. I don't know when all this is supposed to end and he's supposed to return and reface the earth. But I'm just kind of like thinking, well, Lord, how long are you going to let us be this way? So, I mean, I'm certainly not doubting God exists or I'm not doubting my Catholic faith, but it's just there's those moments of frustration where you just, you got to really ask yourself, what are you questioning? Is it just belief in God? Is it, the plan? Is it, where are we now? What is my job in this? And dare I say this, sometimes we have to ask the question, like say if someone close to you dies. Why did they die? I was watching this documentary, for example, on this musician I remember seeing in concert when I was a teenager, and he died about 25 years ago. And it broke my heart because his family, of course, struggled with his passing, and because he was a good person. His mother openly said that she was a woman of faith and lost it when her son died. And my heart, goes out to her. I don't know what she's feeling. I don't know how that feels, but before they interviewed his mother about that, one of his friends had said, well, he told me openly, he goes, well, I smoked for 20 some years. It finally got to me. So, it's sad, but it's like, I mean, my father, for example, wasn't a very active person. So my children were young when he died, and I was always open with them. I said, look, I love my dad. I miss my dad. I know you guys miss him too. I go, but what do you learn from something like this? How do you live your life? How do you try to better yourself that you don't shorten your life in a negligent way?
Yeah, such wisdom there because, when we listen to the stories of other people and they, like you said, he asked you that question,
Hmm.
and it made you think about your struggles. I think we all have some kind of struggle, even whoever's listening to this podcast right now. Obviously, you're listening to it because maybe you or somebody you know has had a loss of faith. And, I want you to know that you're not alone. And both Carlos and I have experienced that, right, Carlos? I mean,
Absolutely.
so, when you listen to us talk on this podcast, I mean, we're giving you something to think about maybe later on. Um, Not something that you need to obsess about, of course, but something to just as like a conversation starter, right?
Hmm.
Because once we start thinking about these things and maybe talking to somebody else about it, it helps us to work through things. And I want to also mention that we have that wonderful service with the foundation that we offer a free priestly consultation that all you need to do is go to nonatus.org, our website, to the priestly consultation drop down and make that free appointment. You'll be able to talk to a priest and maybe kind of finish this conversation as to how you can get back to the faith if you've lost your faith. You know, sometimes we feel like we've been away from church for a while, maybe been away from confession for a while. I mean, I will give one quick story that when my oldest daughter was a baby, and, sometimes when you have a child or a grandchild, it really instills in you how much you want your kids and your grandkids to believe in God and go to church,
Hmm.
right? And so that was one thing that really made me say, you know what? I haven't been to confession in a while. I need to get back to confession. I have a baby. She's going to get baptized, right?
Hmm.
So that was one of the things I did. I even remember, she was too tiny for me to leave her outside the confessional. So I actually had to bring her in with me.
Mm.
She was
Why
only like
not?
2 months old or something, So, I mean, what do you do? So, she didn't understand what I said, but I mean, let's hope not. But what I'm trying to say is that God gives us these opportunities to better ourselves and to grow closer to Him and to get forgiven for our sins, because when we go to confession, we really are wiped clean of those sins.
Hmm.
And I think we all need to remember that. I mean, me too, is that the church offers us these beautiful gifts at the sacraments to bring us back because the church knows and God knows that we need it, right? We need it over our lifetime. There will be times that we feel kind of dark and dreary and not close to God. And so we have these beautiful gifts to bring us back and to help us to get through life and to do our best and to really enjoy life, right? Because God does want us to
Yeah.
enjoy our lives. He does want us to be happy, believe it or not.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing is with the kids when they get older and you we remember being that age and having to go through that and having to really let someone give us the room to do that. And I think that we have to also accept the fact that it's not going to get easier when we get older. Like sometimes oh man, I've known people, at my age who've died a lot since the pandemic, and then just even people I know who, um, their parents are in their 80s or 90s, and they're, oh gosh, they're going through difficult things, traveling along with their loved ones, and just because and you sit there and you're like, man, I feel so bad for, so and so, she's 88 years old, but it doesn't stop. We're all challenged. We're always going to be out asked to stretch ourselves. Like recently, I want to share this. It kind of goes together. Recently, I came across, I'm paraphrasing this, a quote some minister had said. It said, "The test of the Christian life is not how much you love Jesus, but in loving Judas."
Oh, wow. Never heard that one
And
before.
yeah, and then recently I this semester I'm teaching a world religions class, and we were doing this. I just finished a chapter on Buddhism. And so I had the kids, there was this great interview I had them read. Thomas C. Fox, he's a Catholic writer, and he's a strong influence in Buddhism. And he shared this great story in this interview where he talked about being a missionary in El Salvador and, seeing a lot of violence. And he spoke to a monk, a Buddhist monk, about it, and is similar wording where the monk said, because he felt bad because he was angry with the terrorists, whatever you want to call them. He was angry with them because of what they were doing to people. And the monk had said to him, "You are not, none of this is ever going to stop until we all see that we are one humanity with the people that are doing these acts in El Salvador. It's
Mm.
like really love is going to conquer the world, but there's so many times that we don't allow ourselves to cross the road to do that. I mean, I am so guilty of that. I am very good at grudges but and a lot of times we will sit there and say to ourselves, well, you're protecting yourself, and there's a lot of truth to that. But there has to come a point where you have to, you're going to be challenged. And again, so our faith being challenged or loss of faith, whatever, you have to be willing to look at your own experiences and why you're carrying a burden, hearing another person's story in terms of why they've lost their faith or they're angry with God or something, instead of lecturing them and telling them, well, you're going to go to hell, or, I'm not saying any of that's not true, but I'm saying, how are you reaching out to this person? And, it's interesting because God knows their heart. I mean, my father always used to tell me that, you know, we always assumed Judas was condemned after his passing. He goes, we don't know what happened before he, took his life to whatever. And it's not our place. It's not our place to condemn people. I think one of the best things I ever heard a parent say was years ago when Charlie Sheen, the actor, he was just acting crazy at one point.
Yes, I remember
And
that.
you remember, and Martin Sheen, someone interviewed him and they asked him, have you spoken to your son? He goes, yes, of course I've spoken to my son. And they go, well, what have you said to him? Like they're waiting to hear that Martin's been, reprimanding him. And he said, I'm his father. My job is to love him and to pray for him.
Mm.
So it's like sometimes the role we have to take it's not going to be easy. But I think the most important thing is you let them know you're there if you want to talk. If you need someone to talk to about it, just so they know you're going to listen. Um, I always think what I find in my job that's very uplifting is when a kid tells me, they might talk to me about a personal matter, and I might say like, "Oh, who did you speak to anyone else about this?" And they're like, "Yeah, I spoke to Mr. So and so or Miss so and so." And it's like, "Okay, yeah, good choices." And they go, "Yeah, I know that if I sit and talk to them, they're not going to judge me. They're going to just listen and they're going to be there and just let me get it out." And sometimes if they talk to me, that's great. But I say, look, if it's me, great. If it's someone else, just talk to someone and remind people to, just be there. I mean, I always envision Jesus, like the woman caught in adultery. I always pick that story, and I have this. I'm certain that considering how she was living her life, he probably looked at her in a way that no man has ever looked at her before. With love, with like, I see who you are. I see who you really are. Now I want you to believe it, which is what would save her. Like just to that, he could have sat there and who would have known the law better than him. But yeah, he never said she didn't do anything wrong. But he loved her. And he probably saw in her too. She had a lot of regret and just needed that person to just say it's okay. And it's funny how we don't know what happened to her. She may have become one of the most devoted followers because of that. I mean, that's what people when they ask me all the time about high school, teaching high school, I say these kids, they're hungry for information. I mean, yeah, there's quirks about them. They're always on their phones or just they're always in love, whatever. I mean, they're teenagers, but I say, you just answer their questions, listen to them, and if they know you care. You'd be surprised to find teenagers are the most loyal people you'll ever meet. But they just want to be treated like a person. And everybody does. But and because I'm thinking of their struggles and some of it can be as silly and nonchalant as it isn't, but we've all been through that too, so we should be a little more understanding. But I mean, if someone is literally having a faith crisis and they're talking to you about it, I mean, at least they're talking to you about it. I mean, this is important. So we really have to think about how we handle it.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I mean, everything that you said is so true. And I do believe that everything that what you reflected in, your time of talking just now was that we need to have that active listening. We need to learn to let the other person kind of have their feelings, right? And that's not an easy thing to do, because
No.
as parents, right? I know the last podcast we did on parenting, but on
Hmm.
loss of faith, whether it's being in a parent-child relationship or with anybody else,
Yeah.
I think we all have that tendency to want to fix people. We want to fix situations and give them advice, and people have to be ready for advice. I believe that's really true. I mean, they have to be ready and they have to be willing to want to listen and take advice. So,
Yeah. We have to also consider
yeah.
that we want to fix it. That was the key, what you just said, but they need time to process and they
Mm.
need to think about it and um they need to struggle with it. They need to we've all been there too. We when we understand it, it's not an overnight thing. And I was saying earlier about my crisis, there's certain things that I learned or I encountered in my days of grad school that they still echo in my head. But it's not that I haven't encountered arguments or claims or whatever that haven't stopped me in my tracks as well in the last several years. But even though I'm firmer with what I believe and I'm better at conveying that in a setting where I can really stop someone else at times in their tracks who's a non-believer, I would be foolish of me to think, okay, I'm going to turn around and refute their argument and they're going to just stop and go, oh, you know what, you're right. Give me the number. I'm going to join RCIA. That's not going to happen
Yeah.
because they've been embracing this idea for so long. And also keep in mind, sometimes what you get from, where you got these ideas from could be someone you trust. I mean, if you grew up atheist and you were taught atheism from your parents, I mean, who should you trust more than your parents? And that's why some people who have a crisis of faith, they don't completely leave the church because that's their root. They trust in what was taught and that's great. But it's like we have to understand that it's our job to, when the time is right, to also properly instruct them on what they need to know. Because some of the stuff, obviously, we believe it is challenging. It's difficult. Um, that someone would be crucified and rise from the dead 3 days later. Yeah, that's a pretty crazy thing to believe in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
If you
but
don't have faith, that's right. Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, look at how many Christians over the years have provided, good details as far as why it's um credible to believe. And I think the other thing that we have to really, and I really want to bring this up in this discussion, is we have this cultural concept now that it has to be absolutely empirical. And the truth is, nothing, if we believe, well, first of all, belief is part of being human. Like who got married because you put your spouse through the scientific method and thought, perfect, we'll never get divorced. No, you believed you were making the right decision. We want to have this pronouncement of this like victorious discovery, if you will, that proves XYZ. And there are just some things in life that's not going to be the case. You don't make every decision based on, you know, concrete evidence. And I think it's fair to say, and no disrespect, because even the church has been a huge advocate for science. Science does not have all the answers. And a lot of scientists have said, look, we can only teach you about what is observable and what's been tested. We don't have all the answers. The problem we have is that we grow in knowledge and we think sometimes because we've learned so much in our discipline that we have all the answers. I mean, I've seen people with a God complex who are theologians because rather than healing the body, like you physicians who have a God complex where they can get that because they see what their knowledge of the body can do for people because of the fact that your wisdom could heal someone spiritually. Same thing. I know all the answers. Well, no, none of us do. And I've actually am comforted by that. by the fact that I will be searching till I die and I'll never know all the answers. And
Mm,
I'm also comforted by the words in the catechism. My favorite word in the catechism is mystery.
mm. Agreed. That's a good word. And life is a mystery. Our faith is a
Hmm.
mystery. I mean, so much of it. I thank you. I keep repeating the word wisdom whenever you talk because what you're instilling is what you've learned over your lifetime and your faith journey and in your relationships. And for people who are
All my
listening,
failures too.
yeah, right. We all have those. And
Yeah.
for somebody who's listening, you who are listening, you have wisdom, you have knowledge, you have experiences. And I believe that one of the best ways that you can grow in faith is to talk about it with somebody, right? We have a program. It's not just through my church, it's a national program, but it's called Walk with One. And it is through the Eucharistic revival that was a couple years ago in Indiana, where there was more than, I think, 60,000 people that came for the conference all over the United States in honor of the Eucharist. And that Walk with One program is thinking about maybe one person that you know. It could be a family member, a friend, a coworker, whoever that is, of somebody that you can just begin to pray for, who might be somebody who's away from their faith or someone who would like to come back or just somebody that you think could be open to coming back. So I just invite you that if you want to check it out, just Google that simply Walk with One, maybe Eucharistic Revival, and you'll be able to see the website and learn about how you and I and Carlos, whoever wants to join, in praying about that one person in your life that would be open to it. Because a lot of times, we think about all those people we want to evangelize with, and maybe there are people who are very distant right now and don't have any interest in coming back to the church. But there might be somebody, maybe it's somebody that you work with, or maybe it's a neighbor or something. So I just invite you, whoever you are out there, and if you are that person who needs to talk to somebody, remember to reach out to us at the foundation for that free priestly consultation. We would love to have that appointment with you so you can talk through some things and figure out what those questions of faith that you have, what they are, and how you can get them answered. So, Carlos, do you have any final words before we end?
Sure. I would say in our own struggles, be patient, keep searching, keep an open mind. When it comes to those close to us, give them room. Just remind them, even when they kind of glare at you, that I'm here to listen. I'm whatever yours on your mind, just that you're there. And because there's always going to be something echoing in our minds that challenge us. And I mean, I even when I've heard from converts who say that you never fully divorce yourself from what you used to believe. Like there's always pieces of that are still there. And so I think mystery is a beautiful word, again, from the catechism and how the church describes some things. And I think also doubt is something we should welcome because I think if we doubt something, we're thinking about it. And I think that's a good thing. I talk with parents a lot at work about, they're struggling because their kids, dinner table, they're asking questions they never asked before. I'm like, well, that's good. Your kids are thinking about it. So I would really rather them do that than be sitting there saying, I really don't want to talk to you guys. I just want to sit here and watch reels on my phone. I mean, no, if they want to actually talk about it, that's a good thing. So,
Very good thing.
yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
anyway, to all of you, thank you very much. Now, this podcast airs on the first Tuesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern on our Philly Nonatus YouTube channel and also our SoundCloud channel on Philly Nonatus. So, please do like and subscribe. Share this podcast with your friends. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We will see you next time here with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. God bless.